Good morning all and welcome to another Jump Recruitment discussion. This week we're going to have some quite fun and games going on, and I'll explain that in a little minute how the fun and games are going to happen. But we all know there's a huge issue in recruiting staff for ourselves at the moment, but that shouldn't really curtail our growth plans for the business this year. In fact, growth in 2022, should I say, will primarily come from the people who are already sitting in your business. So today we're going to look at scaling your business without actually adding heads. There's a study by Accenture that showed for every dollar invested in training, a company will receive $4.53 in return. That's a 335% ROI on training if done properly. The probability of selling to your existing customers is 60 to 70% higher than selling to a new customer. The probability of selling to a new customer and bringing a new customer on board is between 5 and 20%. It's interesting that 80% of business surveys said they rely on email marketing alone for their customer retention. And the cost of 16 times more, or it costs you 16 times more to bring a new customer up to the same level as your current average client that is billing with you. 68% of customers leave your business because they perceive that you are indifferent to them, and 40% of customers will take their business to a competitor within 1 day of experiencing bad customer service. A 10% increase in your customer retention can result in a 30% increase in the value of your business, and 89% of employees want training available anywhere and at any time so they can do their job properly. Internal new hires are 61% more likely to go for a job than those who are promoted into the same position. So what that says is that if you promote people into the same position, you're going to get more longevity out of people. And 70% of staff would leave their current organization for a job with one knowing that they're going to invest in their employee development, learning and development. Today I've got Mr. Paul Jacobs, who is sat in Houston Station. So he's just having a fire alarm, I understand.
Hey, I am, yes. Hello, everybody.
His train's been cancelled a couple of times, so he's not too sure what he's doing. We have Heather Solway, who's at Birmingham International train station, out there in the cold, waiting for a train to arrive, and that train will arrive. And so at some point during this webinar, Heather will be sort of onboarding, but not the onboarding that we want to be talking about, but onboarding the train from there. So let's kick off and see where we are. So we're talking about today, very much so, about scaling your business without adding additional heads. So I think the first place that we should really kick off with is we've talked an awful lot over the last sort of 6 months about retention strategies, about retention being the new recruitment, etc., etc. So let's really kick off and talk about retention strategies and what that actually means to you as a company to ensure that you are retaining the staff, because as we said, it's the staff that's in your business today that's going to start to make you or increase your GP this year rather than new staff that you're going to recruit.
Okay, well, can you hear me okay, by the way? I hope so. You can?
I can hear you, Paul. Yeah, we can hear you, Paul. Yeah, you can hear you, Paul.
I'm trying to talk about the alarms going on in Euston Station. So it's a great point, Howard. I think one of the issues, well, virtually the issue that every recruitment business is having at this point in time, finding enough people. But you don't want a leaky bucket. You don't want to be in a position where as you're bringing people in, you've got people leaving you, and that is definitely happening as well. We find at this moment that people are being wooed by competitors to go and join their businesses. And the last thing I think any recruitment business wants right now is to be busily trying to recruit new people and only to find existing very valued people leaving the company. And I think one of the bigger threats, and certainly it's been the case with some of my clients, are internal recruitment jobs coming up. We're finding quite a few people departing for internal recruitment roles. So I think these are big issues, and therefore this point about retention strategies is absolutely critical. Making sure that you look after your people and take care of them through coaching, through succession planning, through showing them that you really do care for them. And I think that talks to things around work from home. It talks about the benefits packages we're representing. It's looking at the modern work-life balance. All of the things that we've been talking about during these webinars become extremely important. People no longer prepared to work 9 to 5. They want to have a more flexible work life. And I think we as an industry have to really reconsider how we approach the whole issue of looking after our people and developing their careers, so that as they become trained, well coached, and very valuable to the business, they see their future with the company over many, many years. The succession planning issue, the development of people, as you've just pointed out, Howard, is critical.
Heather, from out there in the blustery Birmingham?
I'd support everything that Paul's just said. And I think some of the stats, Howard, in your introduction were really interesting and really relevant here. One of the things that I keep coming across in talking to recruitment leaders is really a sense of complacency. You know, that they think that they treat their staff well, and their staff are going to stay and be loyal. And, you know, the reality is that rec to recs are out there talking to your staff. I apologize for the noise.
This is what happens when you're on a windy platform.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, so there's a Welsh and Borders diesel train going past me there. So if you think rec to recs aren't talking to your recruiters right now, you know, you're wrong. And so one of the real quick wins I think you can make sure you're having is, if you're not already doing it, having regular conversations with your staff about the dream, about the next step, about the plans, about the promotion. Because if you're not having that conversation with them, you can bet your life a rec to rec is having that conversation with them. And so, you know, as well as all the great, positive, proactive things that Paul talked about, I think we need some defensive strategy in here as well, to actually be engaging with everybody about, you know, telling them about all of the things on a regular basis that are available, the dream that is with you, so that they're not then sold the dream with someone else. Because we've all had that frustration of people leaving for things that we could have done for them. And so I think that defensive conversation needs to be had all the time as well.
It's interesting. I think we've talked quite a lot about, over the last 2 years, really about retention, and you two have sort of absolutely hit that on their nail from the, from what we've been talking about. I want to put a slight twist on retention then, and look at what it is from a consultant's point of view. So if we focus on building new ways to service our clients, therefore we have to develop our people constantly and improve the service that they're taking to the market. Not only will we start to retain our staff because we are actually doing lots of training and development, but we start to retrain our client base as well. And that sort of means that we can start to build a more exclusive base. We can start driving growth from the business from within and externally. So we've got to start to think we're busy at the moment, and we're really busy, and everyone's talking about this. But last week, at the expo, I attended a talk on psychometric testing, and it was really interesting about how they were developing psychometric testing to boost gross profit, boost retention of clients, but they never talked about how it would boost the retention of staff. And I think what we've got to start to think about, all of these little things where we think about, new services, whether it be psychometric testing, whether it be retained business, whether it be talent advisory, talent penetration, etc., etc. If we start to think about how we can redress our services to our clients, we have to then redress those services with our consultants and therefore train and develop them. If they're selling bigger and better products in a better way, then their retention of them will be more significant, because they feel that they've got a better product to actually take to marketplace, and therefore a better chance of succession rather than moving to somewhere else. So I think retention, what Paul and Heather have said, is really important, but I think we've got to take it that one step further. It's not just about retention of the staff, it's retention of your clients and your candidates. And for that, we've got to start to take a new approach to how we service all three of those sections to ensure that we carry on growing the business. We talked a lot about the cost of employment in 1 year. versus the profits in year 2 and year 3. And one of the ways that we've got to start to think about why retention is so important and how to increase profitability of the business without adding heads is what we do in year 1, which then leads to the profit in year 2 and year 3. So talk to me, Paul, about, if you think about the people that we've taken on in 2021, they're now becoming critical for the growth of gross profit in 2022. So
yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Howard. One of the sort of problems that we have as an industry is our mindset. We want people to join us and instantly make money. That's why there's such a cry always for experienced people. We need people that have got experience because they're going to hit the ground running, they're going to make us money very quickly. I think everybody listening to this will know that that is often not, it's not the case. Very often people with experience do not hit the ground running, actually causes quite a lot of problems. I think the mindset around that is based upon the fact that people in our industry feel that they haven't got the time, they haven't got the space, the mindset to train and coach people and give them a period of time to settle down before they become productive. So what they try to do, what we all try to do, I suppose, is find the instant fix. Somebody that can be brought in, hit the ground running, make money very quickly. That's the dream. It's very rarely the case. What we're finding, certainly through our clients, because they've really almost given up on trying to find experienced people with the right behaviors and values, is that the new people that have got crossover skills from other industries that we're training from scratch, are very quickly, within 4 to 6 months, becoming highly productive. But you do have to accept that for the first 3 to 6 months, the chances of actually making much of a profit, not particularly high. However, as you've just pointed out, Howard, once we get into the back end of the first year, the last 6 months, and then into the second year and onwards, we really start to see fantastic productivity from these people. The fact is we do have to sacrifice, and I know it's difficult, but we do have to sacrifice a level of cash flow in those first important 3 to 6 months. And in my experience, it applies not only to brand new people, but it often applies to experienced people too. But if we don't make that investment in people in that first 6 months, particularly through coaching and training and development, we're not going to benefit from their productivity as they start to move on and develop their careers. There is no easy solution here. There is a limit to the amount of available experienced people that we want in our business that exhibit the right behaviors and values. And therefore, we're going to have to find people who have the ability to become great consultants with us. But we have to put time and energy and money into them if we're going to get the profits that we should get from them as they develop in that first year, and then certainly into the second and third years. So this is a long-term investment, medium to long-term investment. There are no shortcuts, in my opinion.
Heather, from a HR side?
It's going to be a bit tricky for me with background noise, Howard. I might need to skip that question if you want to go to you.
Okay, so I'm sort of hedging a bet what you two were going to say. And I think what I've found when I'm sort of out with clients quite a lot, certainly doing management training and looking at the younger managers in the businesses, what they don't fully understand is what the actual cost of an empty desk is, or an unproductive desk. And so sort of working with lots of companies, I've asked and trialed this figure on a number of occasions, and it's sort of there and thereabouts. So if we start to think about the actual churn rate in recruitment, and according to Perk Box, it's 43%, as I keep saying, in recruitment, which is obviously huge. So if you take an average salary and commission in 1 year at 28K, and then the cost of running that person through the business, including training, systems, etc., it works out at around about 54K for the year, and that's $4,500 a month. So again, with that 43% retention rate, if you recruit 2 people, it's going to cost you 108K. But on that current stat, if you lose 1 person, and on average, a person in that first year builds between 40 and 80K, so let's say they build 60K, it means you're actually going to make a loss of 48K, which is a huge loss to think about it. So it shows the sort of profit that the product that we're bringing in, we need to get it beyond year 1. But we know if we can get the average person to build the average amount at the end of year 1 and have that run rate of 10K, then year 2, they will bill 120K. So if we start to think about, if you recruit 2 people in year 1 and 2 people in year 2, so you've got 4 people, that means that you'll have only made 72k in GP. If you drop 20% to the bottom line, which means you're only dropping 14k over the 2-year period of taking 4 people in, if we carry on with a 43% churn rate. So it starts to say we've got to really address how we recruit people, how we train and develop those people, and then how we retain them. We know if we get people past year 2, there's an 80% plus chance of them being there for 4 years. So we start to think about that generation of revenue in there. It means that we have to start doing the training and development now of all of our staff, whether they've been in 1 month or whether they've been in 5 years, to retain those staff, because the knock-on effect down the line of the revenue lost is actually huge. And when you work it out in that way, recruiting 4 people, they're going to make you 14k's worth of profit based on the averages of dropping 20% from your GP line to your net profit line. That's an awful lot of work for 14k. We've got to start to address that retention rate properly and start to look at what the cost of that is. And that sort of means that if we start to think if we can retain our our consultants longer, we've got to start to think about them retaining our clients more and getting more out of our clients. The client penetration then becomes really important. So let's talk, Paul and Heather, about existing client base versus new client base. And I threw some stats in at the beginning there about some new client base and old client base. So let's talk about where we can get the majority of our revenue from 2020. Is it from existing or is it from our new client base?
You have become the stat meister today. I've never heard so many stats in one webinar in my entire life. But anyway, I would say exactly what you've already said, H, that the biggest opportunity any recruitment business has in terms of developing more business is already through their existing client base. You know, something, I can't remember the exact stat you gave, but I would suggest it's around 70% of our new business will come from approximately 30% of our existing client base. That old Pareto's law cliche. It's a fact. Already where you have warm and even hot relationships, as it were, with clients, they're much more inclined to be open to you approaching them about exclusivity, retained business opportunities, master vendor, RPO type opportunities. And it's through those clients that we've got the best opportunity to upsell and cross-sell, rather than going in cold to companies that haven't worked with us in the past. Now, you guys listening already know which of your clients are already warm towards your business, but we need to be proactive towards them because it's very rare for them to approach us. And if they are approaching us, they're probably also approaching a bunch of other competitors with a PSL in mind or some kind of tender. So we need to be proactive, get ahead of that particular scenario and start talking to our existing clients about other opportunities that we can possibly assist them with. Now, that may be locally, but it can also be nationally and internationally. But the fact that we already have a great relationship with the client gives us leverage. So the majority of what we're going to get is already through existing clients. Now, when you come back to the point about retaining our staff, who do our clients build relationships with? Do they build relationships with the name over our door, or are they building relationships with the human beings that we employ? The answer, as we know, is people by people. And this talks back to the fact that if we're going to develop long-term and deeper relationships with our clients, which in turn provides us with higher yield, we need to make sure that the people they value, in other words, our valued people, are retained by our business. It's, as Howard's pointed out, losing people very quickly is a very costly affair. We need to generate loyalty from the people that work for us, who in turn will get that loyalty from the customers that we work with. Now, it's then, as I said, a question of being proactive, leveraging those relationships through our people in order to get the business growth that we're seeking.
It's interesting, as I go back to that sort of retention in the first year, you know, if you think your upfront costs of employing the person are at the beginning, and then the costs of them actually paying back is at the backside of that first year. So if we lose them in the first 6 months, it's still going to be equate to a large chunk of that 54k. And that's what we've got to start to think. But when we start to look at client penetration, I've been working with a number of clients on this about looking at their client base. And it was basically based on who do we develop, who do we maintain, and who do we sack? And it was really interesting on the number of times that I've done it, the amount of clients that where someone has held that client in high esteem, and what we've actually found when we've actually run through the process, that client is really a bit of a dog and needs, dealing with in a certain way. And so what we've got to think when we think client penetration, we have to really understand the client. And it was interesting when I started to pull this presentation together. This is John Ive. He's one of the head designers at Apple. And his comment there is absolutely true for recruitment. It's very easy to be different, but it's difficult to be better. And so we start to think about what we can provide into our client base that is better than our competition. Then we start to separate ourselves out from the competition. But to do that, we have to really understand how we are, or how to be better, and what the client actually needs. And that means we've got to change from the typical recruitment strategy, which is look at what the client needs today, and we will potentially look at what the client needs tomorrow. We've got to start to view what the client needs over a long period of time, and then start to cater for those services and bring those services in. So when we start to think about client penetration, we start to think about how we sell into the client. And what Paul is saying there is absolutely right. We are beholden to the recruiter that has the client relationship with that client. But if we create more time for the management within the business and the team within the business, higher team, if we start to think about level selling, then your directors should be selling to the directors. Your recruiters should be selling to the recruitment line. So we start to get a two-pronged approach into that business, because it's the high end of the business, the C-suite of the business, that will start to tell you what is actually happening long term. And they probably don't tell the recruitment line until the recruitment line needs to know. And what do we all know? We all know that the recruitment that's happening today, February, was probably planned 3, 6, maybe 12 months ago, but we only found out about it today. If we'd have known about it 3, 6 months ago, we could have started to build that client base, that candidate base, sorry, for the clients. So we've got to start to think, how do we create a better service for our clients? Because I say it's easy to be seen as different, but it's very hard to be seen as better. And if we go in and to be seen as better, then we start to take more clients on a more exclusive basis, which again then starts to drive revenue, long-term commitment, and that means from both the client and from the candidate. But also it drives that from the consultant's point of view, because they feel they've got a product that they can sell and grow with a client, and therefore we have to A, maintain that, but B, safeguard it with the business, and that means looking after your employee from there. So as we're talking very much about employees, the churn in recruitment, if it is genuinely 43% from the stats that we get, we've got to start to think about what behaviors and values that we require, but not just to bring into the business from our point of view. We've got to think about how those behaviors and values then knock on and cause a ripple effect with our client base. And that's what I want to sort of move on to, Paul. I think we've lost Heather. I think she's got herself onto a train but can't sort of get any connection from there.
She'll be quaffing a glass of champagne in first class as we speak.
Somehow I think not. She's getting on in Birmingham. So what we'll think is then, if we think about behaviors and values based on skills, when we start to think about how we can create more from what we already have, why is behavior and values really important compared to skills?
Okay, so this is a pet subject for me, because whenever people leave recruitment businesses, it doesn't take very long before they're being criticized for their behaviors. And in most cases, never like that person. They were always this, they were always that. You always hear it, or regularly hear it. And it always crosses my mind at that point that the irony was very often the case that the individual could actually do the job. Sometimes these comments are made about people that were actually decent or very big billers. We should always be recruiting behaviors and values, and it should be one of the most prominent things in our mind when we interview. Because as I think everybody listening will agree, there is nothing worse than having to work alongside somebody who is an internal terrorist, somebody that is causing us issues, causing issues with other members of staff. Doesn't matter how much they're billing, they're causing problems and they're causing damage internally. And of course, that damage can often be felt with our clients as well. So when we recruit, behaviors and values alongside emotional intelligence are the two things that I personally always drill into. I want to know what kind of individual I'm going to be working alongside, whether they share the values and behaviors of our business, whether they share the behaviors and values of the people they're going to work alongside. And for me, it's critically important. I mean, if you look at it positively and you're working alongside people who are aligned with your behaviors and values, they're an absolute pleasure to work alongside and are much more likely to stick with the business for a very long time because culturally they're very fitted to the organization. And yet what we tend to do during the interview process is review people based upon their experiences, particularly in recruitment, and often on their educational qualifications. Now, those things are important, but they're not as important, in my opinion, as establishing behaviors and values and emotional intelligence, because those are the two boxes that I tick to establish that somebody has what it takes to become a great recruitment consultant. And I suppose rather selfishly, I want to make sure that the people I'm working with, that I'm spending more time with than I spend with my own family, are people I enjoy working alongside, who understand the morals, the integrity, the honesty of me and my business. And I think those things are critically important. Also, not only from my perspective, but I know my clients will benefit from their behaviors as well. So I think these things are really important. And I wasn't joking when I mentioned that when people leave businesses, very often we don't talk about what they were able to build for us. It's mostly about what kind of human being, what kind of personality they were. So I would really urge people to do this. You mentioned psychometric tests a moment ago, Howard. One way of establishing behaviors and values is to use psychometric tests during the interview process, making sure that if you can, and they're not that expensive any longer, and drilling down into competency-based questions in order to establish what kind of person you're considering taking into your organization. Who are you inviting into your home is a question you should be asking yourself.
I think on that, Paul, there's a bigger question to be asked about psychometric testing that we can leave to another day, because embedding it properly into your business is an art and not just a matter of just throwing out a psychometric test and hope it fits from there. So I always think about this question, and I try to sort of, again, I think today's about doing things that are slightly different than the usual. You know, your behaviors and values need to align to your consultant, and your consultant needs to align to the company's behaviors, etc. But once we start to think that that is the correct thing to do to bring people in, what we can then start to think about is actually streamlining your business based on individual strengths. And too often we've done, we've not looked at the long-term needs of the business because we're too busy looking to fill the day-to-day requirements. And we need to think about the difference of chasing jobs and presenting candidates. And so when I start to think about, behavioral based versus skill based, etc., I start to think at this moment in time where the weaknesses are or the gaps are in the business. And I start to think, why are companies so focused on the number of jobs that they have? If we were focused on the number of candidates and growing a candidate base, not just for today but for the long term, and then we can take that candidate to market and take it properly to market, not just blanket email across for 50, 60 clients, then all of a sudden we have a very different thing. Because if you think our behaviors and values, if we have the right behaviors and values and we give a great service to our candidates, our clients actually buy product. They don't buy our service. They think, or we think they buy our service. Our service is actually the catalyst for their purchase. They buy the actual product, which is the candidate. So we've got to think that our service is based on quality, speed, etc. But without the product, we still can't make a sell. So my view is, if we get behaviorally attuned to what the market is happening now, and we get the right behaviors to maximize the critical points within the business, and then we chase the critical points. And to me, the critical point at the moment is bringing candidates to market and having more candidates than anybody else. Then we need to start to think about that. So if clients need candidates, then we should review the long-term needs of those clients so we can focus on building a revenue stream. We always think about the client pipeline. And let's say the client pipeline, let's say you've got 10 jobs and they're all at 5K placement fee. So you've got a client pipeline of 50K. And if you drop the average 20% or 25% onto the bottom line that actually comes off, you're going to do 12.5K. But if we're going to put 3 candidates to each individual job, that's a pipeline of 150K. If we suddenly drop 25% of that, we're in a very different position. So we're chasing, I think, sometimes the wrong pipeline. The pipeline we should be chasing is, can we place more candidates into the marketplace and drive those candidates into the marketplace? And that's a behavioral and a value situation, not just skills, because it's the service that we give our candidates that will make them become exclusive to us if we drive that properly. We are so proud about getting a client exclusive. We're never proud about getting a candidate exclusive. In fact, I know very few agencies that chase exclusive candidates and actually ask them to remove their CVs from the job boards, etc. But we should be doing that, because our service should be good enough to do that. And that's with behaviors and values rather than just skills. So to me, to do that, we've got to start to think about the benefit of what we've talked about all the way going through this session is ongoing training and development plans for our staff. So Paul, talk about ongoing training and development plans.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody listening here knows that you can't bring people into your business and then essentially hope that they're going to make the grade. You've obviously got to put time and energy into them. And that can be difficult if you're a very small business because you don't have the resources. That's why people like you and I do a lot of training and coaching and mentoring, Howard. It's important to bring in external assistance and support. But it's not just about the people that we bring in who are new to our business. It's clearly also about developing people. We should be spending at least as much time in looking at people we have already in our business who have the ability to progress. Now we're right now, our industry is in a sprint. If you saw the statistics that came out from the REC a few days ago, you can see that vacancies in January continued to rise. There's still a huge demand for recruitment agency services right now. Nothing's diminishing, still things are working at breakneck speed. And I think that to some extent that means we have to make decisions on some of our people at breakneck speed. In other words, create a dynamic environment where people are given the opportunity very quickly to move up the ladder, to be promoted, to be given additional responsibilities and autonomy. We would like to give certain people a bit longer to settle in, to gradually develop, but actually we're in a race. And that means, I think, that it's often the case that we have to provide people with a chance to step up and take on responsibilities, perhaps before they're ready. But I also think that environment for people is a very seductive environment. It's the very thing that people are drawn to, a chance to work and move forward very quickly, be promoted quickly, be given additional responsibilities quickly. But also, if we're going to be doing that, and I believe we do have to do that, we have to really think very hard about what kind of support we're going to give people, what kind of coaching and training are we going to deliver. And I think those things are vital. If you're going to give people the chance to succeed, not to fail, it's not just a question of giving them the opportunity to take on more responsibility, but we as leaders have to provide the support and the coaching and the training that they need on an ongoing basis to help them to grow as quickly as their potential will allow them. Now, as I said already, I think if you can do that internally, brilliant. But if you can't, then you need help to do it. And it's going to be a lot more expensive for any business to lose good quality people at the very point you want them to develop in your business than it is to bring in external assistance if that's what you require. So I think this is a big deal. And for everybody's budget, having to look at coaching and training should be a line on your P&L that's very much filled in. You should be budgeting for this process. Investing in your people is probably the most important thing you can be doing in your business right now.
I think that stat 353% return on investment for every pound invested into training, if it's done right, is the thing that we should all take away from this. And when I sort of thought about this question, you know, we can talk about the usual, we've got to train people, we've got to develop people, etc. I want to give you the incentive why we should be doing this. And I think that is the bigger thing where we start to look at this. So if we look at the actual cost of staff and then look at run rate, if we look at the UK average, and they say the UK average should be, the average recruiter should be billing 10K per month, 120K a year. But I've come across a lot of businesses who don't actually know their gross profit per head. And so if you simply take your gross profit, divide it by the number of heads in your business per month, that will give you your gross profit per month per head. So in the last couple of weeks, I've been working with a number of clients who haven't really sort of understood that. And I've sort of looked at their average, and their average has been around about 7K. So if we think they're 7K and we want to get more profit, so the simple thing is, I've targeted these companies, and I've had a number of companies last year in the same situation, and I required them to grow the gross profit per head from 7K to 8K in the first 6 months, and then from 8K to 9K in the second 6 months. So if you think we did that twice a year, then that's getting 2K per head extra, which is 24K per head bottom line extra per year from those simple staff. And that's just by training them to develop better services, provide better service to your clients and to your candidates. So we've got to start to think, it doesn't take a rocket science to work out. If you've got 10 people in your business, that's 240K bottom line net profit, because they're already in your business. They've already paid the costs on the average GP that they're doing at the moment. This is money on top of that. So if we start to think about how we actually train and develop them properly and have a target that we're moving from, if it's 7K per head per month and we take it to 8K per head to 9K, etc., all of that little growth added together starts to make a huge gain rather than the small marginal gains. And that's what we've got to start to think about training. If we start to think about training, for every pound invested, it puts £4 back into the business approximately, then it's genuinely worth investing in that training and working out what we need to be training on to drive that growth profit. If we then measure it by our gross profit per head per month, then we can start to see what that is driving into the business. And to me, that's where we start to really think about why we should be doing training, because if we can start to increase everybody in our business just by £1,000 a month, that is a bottom line profit that we're gaining, not a gross profit. And that's the bit that we've got to get into our heads and really understand why we should be motivated to train more and more and more. The flip side of training, and I think this is another thing that we can start to look at, Paul, is why process reviews will motivate, empower, and retain your staff. So what is it about process reviews and looking at our processes that will start to add gross profit to our business if we do it properly?
It's a great question. You know, we were talking about being at the Recruitment Expo last week, and one of the things that I think is very noticeable when you go to the expos now is just how many industry suppliers are providing AI and tech to our sector. And of course, the tech is getting cheaper and more efficient all of the time. You know, I'm a great fan of tech that allows our people to do the things we really want them to do, which is to engage on a human level with our candidates and clients. And that means, I think, consistently looking at the processes we have embedded in our businesses and understanding where we can take some of the drudgery away from our people. We already know that most high-performing consultants consider using CRMs and so forth as admin. We never think of it as admin. We know it's important to the business. But if we can lighten the load for our people to a large extent, enabling them to get in front of our clients, spend more time with candidates, as you rightly said, Howard, taking candidates to market, it's something that is vitally important, especially during candidate shortages, but it requires time. If we want people to do the things that we really pay them to do, that provide the bottom line profit, then process reviews are vitally important. The question we always ask people is what would you do differently if you were launching your business today? How would you change things? What would you stop doing and start doing differently? And I think those are questions every business consistently needs to be asking themselves. What can we do with our processes that will improve them? Is it tech? Is it a method of coaching and training people? Do we need to get rid of elements of our processes that add time, add duplication, cause frustration with our people, even potentially drive people away from us? And importantly, and I think we're talking about this, I am at least from an internal perspective, what processes can we improve that will improve the journey for our clients and candidates? How do we provide better service to our customers by looking at how we improve our processes? How will they enjoy working with us to a greater extent? So it's both an internal and an external review of processes that ultimately provide better quality service to our people, to our clients, and our candidates.
I'm going to try and flip this a little bit, Paul. What we're talking about is making our business process go quicker and faster so we can streamline the business. If we can streamline the business, what it actually does, it gives our salespeople more time to be forward facing with our candidates and clients. And that's really what process reviews is all about. However, if we involve our staff in the process reviews and they can create ideas, give ideas how to improve the processes that we give, then what it does, it empowers them to be part of the change process. And once we start to empower them, they start to commit more. And if they commit more, naturally they become more productive. So rather than just thinking they're moaning about our processes, we should be thinking about why they're moaning about their processes and then how we can move them forward from there. So we've got to start to really think about how we can empower them to move forward. So a simple way to beat the competition is simply to outwork them. And to outwork them, we have to have more time to outwork them. And that might be a flippant answer, but from a recruitment point of view, when I go into offices, I can see who's the biggest biller in the office because they're usually the one that's the most work productive, and therefore they're the ones on the phone more. So what we've got to start to think is our process review has got to give us time to take massive action and go back to the client. So Paul, I know you're struggling on time because I know you've got to get a train. So I'm going to ask one last question, okay? And this is a question I've started to ask lots of clients. It's an interesting question, okay? Why is obscurity the biggest problem in recruitment today? And why breaking out of obscurity will empower your people, candidates, and clients?
Wow, that's a brilliant question, H. And it's a very deep question because this isn't just about retention of staff or attraction of staff. This is also about establishing your business as a standout brand. Obscurity to me suggests that you're just one of the crowd. You blend into the wallpaper as a business. That nobody really understands what you do that's different or more or unique or distinctive from others. And so I think this is a very, very big question. Talks to your marketing, your brand equity. It talks to how you treat people as individuals. We started talking about training and coaching, work-life balance, work from home balance. We've talked about benefits, salaries, all those things. I think one of the biggest challenges for every business leader is how do I get my business to stand out from the crowd? And we've talked about this quite a lot over the years, and it's not an easy question to answer because, our industry is a very old industry. It's been around for the best part of 150 years, and to be distinctive from competitors is no easy task. We've often said you don't have to be 100% better to be better. You can be 1 or 2% better to be better. And I think looking for those little angles, those little twists and turns that can just elevate you away from the crowd is so important. And it's not about as the logo or the look of the website, although those things are important. It talks far more to how we treat people and the culture of our business and how we get that across. You talked earlier about Ive, who's the chief designer for Apple. Well, by the way, is an Essex boy like me, so I quite like him. And Apple is all about the brand. It's all about the way we view their organization, the EVP, the employer value proposition. And it's this EVP that we should be really focused on as leaders to ensure that our business is seen and is actually different, not just seen as different, but behaves in a different way. And it's that way which we attract people It's that way in which we retain people, and it's that way in which we develop business and get that upselling, cross-selling opportunity with our existing clients.
See, I thought about this question when I wrote this question, it was based from a couple of conversations that I had at the expo with a couple of clients, and joined in with a couple of suppliers as well. And it was a question about, we're in a candidate shy marketplace, what should we be doing to generate more candidates? And we were talking about marketing, we were talking about this, we were talking about all different things that most recruitment agencies are talking about. And it just suddenly dawned on me that there isn't a candidate shortage. And I'm saying that, and I'm maybe being a bit flippant about that, but there isn't a candidate shortage. What we are as recruitment agencies, we're obscure to our candidate marketplace. So our candidates don't know we're actually there. We have so much competition, and we're not doing enough to be in front of our candidates day in, day out, because we're not marketing to our candidates properly. We're not reaching out to our candidates properly. It's interesting. I was speaking to a client the other day who's in the HGV marketplace, and he specializes in candidate attraction. And he does loads of work on candidate attraction. And he hasn't got a problem with candidates. He has a problem. He hasn't got enough clients to put his candidates to. And so he's outsourced his selling because he's not obscure to his candidate marketplace. Wherever his candidates are, he goes. And so I think what we've got to start to think about, we could have the best services in the world, but if our candidates don't know about those services because we're too focused on our clients, then we're obscure to the part of the market that actually generates money for us. So our obscurity in the candidate marketplace is a real problem. So if you think you can advertise on job boards, LinkedIn, etc., you're one of the crowd, you're one of many, you're not standing out, so you are still obscure. So what can we do to stand out in our candidate marketplace? Because if we own the candidate marketplace, then we will become the power within the marketplace. And so we've got to start to think about this in a different way. It's not there's a candidate shortage, it's that we are obscure to the candidates that are out there in our marketplace. And if we can cure that obscurity, then we'll have more candidates coming towards us than ever before. If we have more candidates coming towards us, we have more product to sell to our clients, which means we have to increase our service, which generates and grows profit throughout the year. So the question is, how much do we invest in preventing ourselves to being obscure to the candidate, considering how much we invest to be to the client, where most clients potentially know who we are. So we've got to think about that obscurity piece, because we need to be genuinely in the face of every single candidate, because remember, the candidate is the catalyst to the client paying you the bills. I'm going to leave it there because I know Paul is rushing for a train.
Nice to see everybody. Thank you for joining us.
So, Paul, if you want to get off and rush for a train, that's absolutely fine. Ladies and gents, thank you much for your time. It's been an interesting conversation today about this. Next week, we're going to look at the Great Resignation. There's been so much written, so much talked about the Great Resignation. But what we're going to talk about is how to keep your recruitment talent on board when the opportunity knocks. It was interesting that Heather mentioned earlier on today that there are lots of people who are being headhunted by the rec-to-rep market. So what are we actually physically doing to stop people moving when the opportunity knocks? So we'll get that advertised out next week. ASP will be back to building sets of 4 next week, so you don't have to log on every time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your time. It's been most interesting. If you've any questions, feel free to post them up. If not, we'll see you all next week. Good luck. Enjoy the rest of the week, and hope it doesn't get too windy where you are. I'm having very, very big wind problems at the moment. 2 fences have gone down the garden today already, which is lovely. So have a great week, and I'll see you later on. Cheers. Goodbye.